Okay, there are various ways for you to convert between units. Here's one way that I used to use when I was younger. Maybe you can see if this is useful for you. So I would write across the top, oh no, K, H, D. Put a star, then D, C, and M. And you can write down, the way for me to remember this, and you can keep repeating this to yourself, is kings. Then humans, you can think kings rule humans. Humans can slay dragons, so we're thinking Harry Potter style here. Dragons can eat dogs, that's not very normal, that's okay. Dogs can chase cats, and cats will chase mice. And you have a little star in the middle. Don't ask me why. So what is this really supposed to represent to help you convert units? Well, K stands for kilo. That's probably a famous prefix you've heard of, like kilogram or kilometer. C stands for centa, you know that one, centimeters. M stands for milli, which could be milliliters or milligrams. And these other ones exist, but we don't use them so often. This one is, the prefix is hecta, this prefix is deca, and this one is deci. So you could actually put all of these words in front of gram, milligram, centigram, decigram, decagram, hectogram, kilogram. We are mainly, and I'll put a star next to those ones we tend to use, are kings, C, oops, there's the butterflies, and M, or something like that. Okay, and in the middle, we also use this one in the middle, and this is would just be the word gram without a prefix, or the word meter without a prefix. So how do I actually use this stuff? So let's just take something like, I'll just write a question here that says convert 2.54 centimeters to millimeters. Now you may be able to do this in your head really quickly. I know I can because I've done this many times, and many of you know that there are 10 millimeters in a centimeter. But here's one way to check this. So I take a look at what my first unit, I have cm. So I'm starting right here. Let me pick a different color. Let's pick red. So if I'm starting here, cm means centa. So I'm going to start here, what my red dot is. And I'm going to go to milli. This is millimeter, and milli is over here. So if that's my target, I'll just write a hollow circle there. If my target is to move from C to M, and this is not the center part right here because there is a prefix, there's two letters here. So we're going to go from here to here, then we're basically moving from one space to the right. So all I do is I take my decimal point and I move it one space to the right. If I do that, then I end up with 25.4. In other words, if I convert 2.54 centimeters to millimeters, my answer is 25.4 millimeters. Okay, you can do this for several larger items as well too. So pause the video, see if you can get that down, and let's try one more. Need a bigger eraser. There you go. So let's try to go the other direction here and come back to a black pen. Let's try to do something weird. I'll just make up some numbers. 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 8, 9. I'll put a decimal place right here. So if I want to convert what is this? 45,123.89. Let's go millimeters to something huge, to kilometers. Let's see if we can figure that out. I would have to think a little bit to do this right in my head. I would have to multiply this a few times. I'll show you another trick in a moment. But here, let's just use the same method and see what we have. So let me go ahead and get rid of this up here. Let me get rid of these butterflies as well. So if we come back to this situation, let's see. Where am I starting? M, millimeter. Where is millimeter? It's not the K, it's not the H, it's not here. It's not here because there's a prefix. There's a letter in front of it. It's not D, it's not C. It must be here. So I'm starting from here. Where am I going to? Kilometers. Well, the K is obviously all the way down here. That's my target. So this is going to be a long distance to travel. So let's see. How many jumps? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 spots. Which direction? To the left. So let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm going to have to put a 0 right there and put my dot down. So check it out. 0.045, 1, 2, 3, 8, 9 kilometers is my answer. That's a very, very small number. So even if you have 45,000 millimeters, that's only 0.045 kilometers. So that's how this process works. Okay, try it out yourself so you can move back and forth. If this can be for meters, it can be for grams. So this could represent just grams, a G, or this could represent just M. And you could put an mg in front, a cg in front, a kg in front. That's it. So let's decorate. Alrighty. Another way to look at measurements, so let's just, this is easier for some people, and I'll go a little bit further in depth here, so I'll call this bonus measurement conversions. So the trick here is to remember that the magic number is 1,000, okay? And most of the measurements that you will do in math or science will be factors of 1,000. So either multiplying by 1,000 or often dividing, oops, that's a division symbol, dividing by 1,000. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take the most famous ones. Let's start with the meter. If I multiply by 1,000 from a meter, then I actually end up with a kilometer. If I divide by 1,000 this way, I actually end up with a millimeter. A centimeter is kind of somewhere in between, but it's easy to remember. You guys have rulers. 1 centimeter has 10 millimeters in it, so that's okay. But this is times 1,000 to get up here. This is divided by 1,000 to get over to here. The same thing is true for grams. So let's take grams. If I go multiply by 1,000 grams, I end up with a kilogram, 1,000 grams. That makes sense. A kilogram, a kilometer. If I divide by 1,000, then I end up with a very small measurement for mass, and that is called a milligram. See how easy that is? Just times 1,000 or divided by 1,000. Now you can go one step further over here. So this is the bonus part, I'll say over here. You could go a little bit further, actually 2 steps further. Those of you who are into Apple products, you've heard of things like the iPad Nano, which just basically means a smaller iPod. But how small is a nano? Well, actually, we have to go a little bit further. If I take a millimeter and I divide it by 1,000 again, I actually end up with something called a micrometer. And the unit symbol is very strange. It looks like a U with a little tail. That's called a micrometer or a micrometer. I'm running out of space here, but if I did it again, divided by 1,000 one more time, this is where we get into the nano level. This is called a nanometer, and that's just an M. So nanometer, micrometer, millimeter, meter, kilometer. And I can do the same thing with the gram here. If I divide by 1,000, then I end up with something called a microgram. Really, really small and tiny. See if you can find out how small a microgram and nanogram are. And if I divide by 1,000 one more time, I end up with something called a nanogram. Okay? Even what we study in IB biology in 11th and 12th grade, when we talk about small, tiny molecules, maybe we'll talk about micrometers, micrometers as a method to measure. People who study physics, now they're looking at how small atoms are and molecules, and you have to really measure tiny things, nanometers. So think about this. 1 millimeter on your ruler is what? Maybe like that big, the distance. So what we're saying is if I could split your millimeter on your ruler in that space into 1,000 tiny little spots, each one of those would be called a micrometer. And if I could split each one of those, in other words, if I could split 1,000 times 1,000, if I could split your millimeter on your ruler into 1 million different divisions, each one of those would be a nanometer. Can you imagine how tiny that is? That's ridiculous. So we're going to put a butterfly because it's just so ridiculous. With red grass, that's how ridiculous that is. Okay, If you have any questions, please post them. That is how you do conversions between these units using factors of 1,000.